Right. Good evening, everyone. Dominic, do you want to do a roll call first?
Yep. So, is Heather Greenan on the call, please? All right. I'll come back to Heather. John Massey?
Yep, I'm here.
Brilliant. Karen Squires?
I'm here.
Michael Kay?
Yes, I'm here, Dom. Thank you.
Thanks. Simon Riley?
I'm here, Dom.
Thanks. Adrian Pegg?
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Nawaz?
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Stanton?
I'm here.
Councillor Nater?
Yep.
And Councillor McChrystal?
I'm here.
Brilliant. Thank you.
We don't have Councillor Patterson anymore.
Councillor Patterson's not in the call, so
Okay.
if he comes online, we'll try and get him in, if that's okay.
Right, that's grand.
Thanks.
Okay, good evening, everybody. And thank you for attending the Corporate Services Scrutiny Commission, 23rd of July 2020. Can we take any apologies first?
No apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Just for the benefit of, I think, Councillor Stanton, if we can, we're more or less just done, but if we just go through introductions, please. So, Councillor Stanton is aware of it. He's new to the Commission, so that'll be fine. Yeah, myself, Councillor Joe Nato, Chair of the Commission.
I'm Dominic Monaghan. I'm the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting. Thank you.
I guess I'm Councillor Stanton, I'm Vice Chair.
I'm Councillor Nawaz.
I'm Councillor Adrian Pegg.
I think we've just got officers to go through.
I'm Simon Riley, the Director of Financial Services.
Hi, I'm Heather Greenan, Director of Policy, Insight and Communications.
And I think there's Michael and Karen.
Yeah, hello there. I'm Mike Kay. I'm Head of Service from the Public Protection Team.
And I'm John Massey, and I'm the Head of Revenues, Benefits and Exchequer Services.
Karen?
I'm Karen Squires. I'm the Democratic Services Manager.
And I believe Lindsay.
Lindsay's just doing the YouTube for this meeting, so it's best
great.
if she stays quiet. All right, thank you.
I could see her on screen. Thank you. All right. Yeah, that's great. I know we're still all getting used to this a bit. I think that's helpful, Councillor Stanton. That was just to let everybody let you know who's around in the meeting. Right. There's no late items to be introduced. I've put instructions. I've put introductions in that, so we've got our agenda items have gone up by one. So just you're aware. Any declarations of interest? None recorded. The minutes for people that were present on the 12th of March 2020. The minutes have been online. Are we okay to approve them? I'm happy with that. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second that for you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, who was that seconded it?
Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Right. I think item 6 is supporting licence holders, and I believe that's yourself, Michael.
It is, Chair, yes. Thank you very much. So here goes with the technology. Can everybody hopefully see? Oh,
Yes.
can everybody see that? Oh,
Yeah.
crikey. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, yeah, good evening, everybody. So, yes, as I said, I'm head of service in the public protection team with responsibility for licensing, and I've been asked to come along this evening to talk to you about what we've been doing in terms of supporting license holders during the COVID-19 pandemic. Just to give you a little bit of a flavour for the types of licences, permits and registrations that we deal with, it is quite wide-ranging. Some of the obvious stuff like the pubs, restaurants, takeaways, taxi licensing, so handy carriages and private hire. We also do the issuing of licenses in terms of houses in multiple occupation. Some more of the unusual bits that we get involved with in relation to skin piercing and animal health. So that's breeding, boarding, pet shops, anything that involves, you know, the use of animals, essentially. So there's quite a lot to it. I might come back to that slide in a minute, but I've tried to keep it as sort of brief and as succinct as possible, and I've kind of like just tried to capture it in these bullet points that you can see on the screen now. So looking at the first one, probably just useful to sort of point out that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we have tried to maintain as much of a business as usual approach where we can, because clearly there are some licenses, registrations and permit processes that you know don't stop just because of the pandemic has been happening, and it's quite important for us to try and maintain that, you know, to keep businesses you know, being able to keep going and trading, for those ones that have been able to, you know, as we've been through this period. Of course, obviously with the pandemic has come a number of legislative changes that we have had to have regard to and, you know, try and alter or incorporate into the sort of practices of the licensing processes. You know, and a good example, you know, of that will be in relation to that previous slide there, the first bullet there, the street, cafe and pavement licenses. And some of you may be aware that obviously as the pandemic has hit, and premises have reopened, social distancing has meant that businesses have not been able to undertake their normal level of activity. So central government have just actually recently, today I think, has received royal assent, you know, some changes to street, cafe and pavement licensing and on off sales in licensed premises that has tried to sort of make that process of obtaining those kinds of licenses a lot easier, and we've obviously had to facilitate that, you know, in the way in which we deal with, you know, licenses that now will start to sort of come in as a result of that. We've also had to sort of just keep on top of guidance that has sort of been coming out from central government too, and that's particularly in relation to you know, businesses that have been allowed to start trading. So, you know, if you can sort of think back, it was pretty much a sort of entire lockdown of most businesses operating, but soon they, you know, licensed premises open up. You know, we've had some food businesses opening back up. We've obviously had you know, barbers and beauty salons, and with that has come guidance from central government, which again, as a licensing service, we've had to take on board and consider the issues sort of around that to sort of help and support businesses work through some of that. So, I mean, a good example of that might be in relation to taxi licenses, particularly private hire licenses. So our Hackney carriages in Derby, they tend to be of a specific type that have got a definitive bulkhead between the driver and the passengers, which from a COVID point of view has been great. Our private hire fleet, though, are often just what we'd sort of call, ordinary saloons, hatchbacks, estates, SUV people carriers that haven't got that level of definitive sort of protection between, or separation between the driver and the passengers. So in the creative way, many examples of businesses being creative over the past couple of weeks and months. We've facilitated the use of some temporary screens that can be installed in private hire vehicles that just give an added level of protection for the driver and the passengers. So again, it's a good example of how sort of guidance has been incorporated into what we've been doing. We've been working with a number of partners, so we've been working closely with people like the police in terms of some of the work we've been doing around social distancing, for example, with our food and safety team who visit a lot of businesses in relation to social distancing as well. Colleagues in our Derby Live service in relation to the street and cafe pavement licenses that we've been working on a process to introduce. The public protection officers who have been out throughout the period, patrolling. They've been our eyes and ears and our I suppose our sort of microphone to sort of be passing sort of information out. And obviously all of this that we've been talking about, in terms of advice and support to businesses who have been contacting us with their specific enquiries. We've also been doing a limited amount of inspection and compliance work. We have just sort of taken a step back from some of that sort of more proactive, lower sort of priority work that we ordinarily do, sort of trying to sort of focus on the bits that we need to ensure that public safety is maintained, but also we obviously, providing as much advice and support to businesses as we can. And then the final bullet on that screen there is obviously just that acceptance that, regardless of the current situation, if needs must, there is always that formal action that we need to take in relation to certain scenarios that might present themselves. Now, suffice to say that has been very, very minimal. We did have some issues with some businesses locally who were opening up before they were allowed to be opening up. So again, we needed to sort of work with some of our colleagues in other teams, to emphasise to them that they shouldn't be opening and prevent them from opening under the circumstances. So that's a bit of a flavour for what we've been doing, Chair. It probably provides a bit of a summary. Probably just open the floor up now then to any specific questions or queries that any members have, if that's all right.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Right, so we can open it up. Councillor Stanton, do you wish to ask any questions on that or any other?
Yeah, I just had a question around mainly the provision during, as particularly pubs and bars and things like that open up. Has there been any provision made to allow them to expand their outdoor offering? Obviously, people are a bit keener to sort of sit outdoors. The restrictions aren't quite as stringent, and some of that would have licensing implications for licensees who haven't necessarily got a license that covers their outside, not just in terms of their ability to, for instance, use a pub yard or use some of the walkway, but actually they're extension of licensed hours within that. Have there been any, is that still the same licensing process, and have we been proactive to reach out to licensees to sort of encourage them to put forward those changes?
Yes, the guidance that's come out around the reopening of pubs and restaurants, those sort of licensed premises, was quite specific in relation to saying that the sort of statutory legislation that was in place, the licensing legislation that was in place, did need to be followed, and I think that was for sort of all sorts of reasons. Probably most notably because of the potential issues relating to antisocial behaviour and potential noise nuisance that people just going outdoors without any control would potentially arise. So we had been updating our licensing website pages, and we have been sort of responding to queries that have come in from licensed premises on the run up to them opening again. The way that most people have dealt with any changes that they needed to make because of their existing license wouldn't allow them to go outside immediately would have been via what we call a temporary event notice. So we've had a couple of businesses who have applied for temporary event notices to move some of their operations outside. Interestingly, that piece of legislation that I was talking about earlier, the one that's received royal assent today, this Business and Planning Act that deals with street and cafe pavement licenses, but also provides a bit of a temporary relaxation for off-license sales, will actually help licensed premises a little bit more now, because what that essentially means is that any licensed premises that has on license will now automatically get off-license sales for say it's a temporary period of time. It's a fairly extensive temporary period. I think it extends to September 2021 at this moment in time. But what that means is that a licensed premises is now able to supply alcohol as off sales to areas which doesn't form part of its premises license area. So that will give the licensed premises a little bit more flexibility to be able to operate, in areas still within their control, but outside of their current license. There is always that caveat, though, in terms of noise nuisance and antisocial behaviour, that if problems do arise, it's not just a carte blanche for premises to operate in any way that they want to. There are mechanisms and controls for us to be able to investigate any issues that arise.
Thanks, Mike. If I can just a follow up. So, and I guess just in specific reference to the new area that's been put together in the marketplace. So if we're not encouraging, but if more places are allowed to or are attempting to sell more off-license alcohol, and therefore people may be more tempted to, for instance, we've seen more people getting together and drinking in parks and things like that, and predominantly that I don't think that's been coupled with a spike in antisocial behaviour as we would maybe normally associate with park drinking. However, in the city centre, I think in certain areas we've got a sort of a street blanket ban on drinking in the street, and I was just wondering from a licensing perspective where that leaves the new open area we're setting up in the city centre. And furthermore, I guess if we're changing, or that's going to be licensed and people are going to be allowed to drink in that area, is what tact are we taking for other people who may choose to go to, for instance, the Cathedral Green or other green spaces or other small areas within the city centre and drink there? How are we striking that balance?
Yeah, it is about striking a balance. I mean, going back to the point about let's pick up on the marketplace. I mean, obviously that is not in the open air. That is obviously that's operating under a premises license that is already in place for the marketplace. It's obtained a temporary event notice for the bar area. It's obviously fenced off, it's controlled, it's managed. The controls that we have in place under the public space protection sort of order process in terms of people drinking in public, will still apply. So the police will still have powers to be able to deal with issues, antisocial behaviour issues arising from people who are drinking alcohol in public. I think licensed premises are going to obviously be more sensible about the process. This should not be about licensed premises selling alcohol to people who then wander off away from the premises. They will be managing the customers that they have in areas in the immediate vicinity of where they are. So I don't want us to sort of think that it's going to be a free for all. There will still be controls in place.
Thanks.
Right, thank you for that, Councillor Staunton. Councillor McChrystal has wanted to raise a question. Councillor McChrystal.
We have got the right balance between enforcement or public protection, should I say, and reassurance of the public, of providing the much needed reassurance of the public to this virus. I'm just curious about the impact of the guidance that's going to come into play tomorrow regarding face masks in the city centre and shopping, and I can imagine that the PPOs are in some degree going to be on the front line of that, possibly. I don't know where that sits with the PPO team. Clearly there's a need to have some enforcement on however that's going to look to ensure that people feel comfortable and confident that they can return to the city centre. It's a safe environment for them to shop. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it probably does fall outside of the remit of licensing and the licensing team, which is obviously the hat that I'm wearing this evening. But yeah, I mean, just to sort of pick up on that point, there has been a bit of sort of confusion as to exactly what what the definition covers in terms of when you need to wear your face covering or not. The PPOs, will be out and about patrolling the city centre tomorrow, and will be there to be able to provide, some advice and guidance on it. The police have also, got some responsibilities in relation to that. It's going to be I don't think we're necessarily going to be going out and sort of enforcing to the letter of the law tomorrow. It will be about sort of engaging and informing, people. It's about wearing it when you're inside shops, essentially, is the definition. We've been working with sort of businesses. We've been working with businesses ever since some of those businesses sort of reopened, all those weeks ago. In terms of the face covering, though, I think it's just very much a case of just seeing how that goes tomorrow and reacting appropriately to situations.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Nawaz, when you're ready.
Just about. Hi, Mike. You're right, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can go first, thank you.
Yeah. Well, my question is about private hire taxis. As you'll know, a lot of them got these partitions in now, right, for this plastic ones. Are they legal? Are you going to be hard on the taxis to take them off, or what's?
No, absolutely not. And as I said earlier on, it was something that we worked closely with when some of these screens first became available, and I think over the weeks they have started to. More and more companies were providing them and supplying them, and essentially what we've said is that as a temporary measure, we support their use, and what we have we haven't been approving them. Because we don't really need to approve them per se. It's down to individual private hire proprietors, and drivers to decide whether or not they feel it's appropriate to have them installed. We haven't got any plans at the moment, to impose any kind of deadline when they can no longer be used. I think what we've said is that it's a temporary measure that will need to be in place as long as they need to be in place. They're not designed to be permanently fitted in the vehicles. They are. I think they're designed most of the time to, sort of fit around or be attached via some kind of elastic straps to the driver and the passenger front seats. So they, as far as we are concerned, they don't create any significant sort of safety some problems with the vehicle. So absolutely, it's a measure that we're keen to support its use.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Mike.
You okay with that, Councillor Nawaz? Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Pegg, do you wish to add anything?
Going on from protection for taxi drivers, are they required to wear face masks, or is that a voluntary thing to do?
Well, no. Again, no, it's not a requirement. It's they're not like the other, the sort of the other public transport systems like the buses, where you are required to wear a mask. What we have, the approach that we have taken is we've provided some guidance and advice to licence holders about what they should consider, what they shouldn't consider, and we have left it to them really as individuals. Most of our taxi drivers in the city, whether they be hackney carriage or private hire, are self-employed people. They have duties for themselves and for their customers, and we've provided some guidance and advice, and we've kind of like left those decisions to be made by them on an individual basis. I know some of our private hire operators, so the minicab firms, who run private hire vehicles, have their own systems and procedures in place, and have provided advice to the drivers who work for them, and obviously are providing advice to customers then who subsequently want to book a vehicle with them. But we've not applied any specific standards or requirements.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for that. I just wanted to add, I think what happens is everybody steals your questions when you end up going last. That was one of my areas there, Michael, I think you've answered it. Obviously, if you look at public transport, it was a requirement for people on buses and public transport to wear face coverings, and you can see a lot of it. Buses going past where they're not wearing them. I mean, is that the role to highlight these problems? Is that a role of the council, or I mean, really, it should be the bus companies that are enforcing that? Many a time I've seen it, and I've looked into buses purposely. The bus drivers are not wearing them, and again, the passengers are going to follow suit by example.
Yeah, we don't, Chair. We don't have any role in sort of licensing the bus operators. They are sort of public service vehicles that fall under a different licensing regime. I mean, there's nothing to stop us as a council, I suppose, contacting it's principally the two big bus companies in Derby, isn't it? Raising the issue with them, I don't imagine. But it isn't something that we don't license them like we would do taxis or other kinds of licensable activities.
Yeah. Just on the second one, it is going to be difficult tomorrow with this new legislation coming in. Everybody more or less is going to be having to wear face coverings and so on, and again, I think you've covered this. The police have said that they're going to be pretty lenient about it. I think in terms of are we going to be observing and advising people and not going and throwing the book at them is probably what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think that's the general approach that we'll take. In a similar way, the approach that we took when businesses first started to open. We've been in the city centre. We've had a presence in the city centre, and we've been working with the police throughout this entire period. So some of the lessons and the approaches that we've taken previously, seem to have run relatively smoothly, and so there's no reason why, this next sort of stage in the process shouldn't be the same. Yes, there'll be a few issues and a few hiccups, I imagine, along the way that we would need to, maybe get involved with our police colleagues. But we'll do that in with the same approach that we've taken previously.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? If there's none, thank you very much, Michael. You're free to leave if you wish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Thank you. Item 7, revenue and benefits. There's my list. Revenue and benefits. Who's covering that one? Is it?
I am, Chair, John Massey.
Yeah. Okay, John.
Just bear with me. I'm just going to get to share the PowerPoint. Hopefully, as successful as Mike did.
I think some of the papers that we had was really fine print. I had to get the magnifier on it. Not on the presentation, some of the other papers.
Okay. Well, I can see the title slide. Okay, so I'm hoping that all members can. Can anybody? Is everybody okay? Can everybody see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So this paper is about, or this presentation is about, what support we're giving for our residents and businesses across the city. And I think it's important to start with just a few facts and figures. This slide here is based as at the 30th of June. And at that time, we had just over 111,000 domestic dwellings in the city. And we'd billed for the 2021 year, 126.5 million in council tax. So that was the net bill. So that's after all reliefs, etc., etc. And for business rates, as at the 30th, there was nearly 9,000 commercial properties within the city, and we had billed, as at the 30th of June, 56.7 million for the 2021 year. And that's a considerable reduction in previous years, and I will go on to explain why that is. I think this next slide is really important because what this tells us is how important council tax and business rates income is to the City Council. In 1920, i.e. last year, based on the Statement of Accounts, council tax and business rates accounted for 61% of the council's total funding. And so clearly council tax and business rates are by far the biggest income streams that we have, and it's very important that we continue to collect these debts wherever we're able to. So starting with council tax, first of all I want to tell members of the committee what we've already done. So in 2021, the current financial year, we've already awarded nearly £30 million in reliefs and discounts, and that includes around £13 million in council tax support. We made a decision to suspend all recovery action until the 30th of June, and that was not only for the current financial year, that was for people in arrears as well. And we also made the decision to allow council taxpayers to defer their first 2021 instalment. The vast majority of instalment plans start from April, but we allowed them to defer that to June. And as you can see there, 2,159 households took us up on that offer. And what that effectively means in terms of cash flow is that within the final quarter of this year, if everybody pays who took up that offer, we'll receive around £1.6 million extra in the final quarter than we would do normally. Okay, so what we've also done, we've used our discretion to apply recent statute law to remove the council tax charge on some empty properties. And it's important that I stress some. It's the exception, not the rule. But I think what this shows is that as a council, we have used our initiative where we're able to justify putting a discount or a relief on a charge. We've done that. We, for example, we used the Coronavirus Act 2020 to be able to say that on some properties that they were where occupation was prohibited by this particular act, we are able to exempt them if they're empty. So that's just one example of where we've used our initiative and reacted to the situation to help residents where we can. We've continued to support households through the single discretionary award policy. Typically, people can access this particular piece of policy where the amount of council tax support they get leaves them some council tax to pay and they can't afford it, where they can demonstrate exceptional hardship or financial hardship. We will make an additional award to remit or reduce the rest of the council tax that's payable. And finally on this slide, it's an interesting fact, well, as a debt collector it interests me. I'm not so sure it'll interest all of you, but it does me. Despite all the challenges that we have, and despite all the challenges that our residents have with coronavirus, as at the end of June we had received just shy of £33 million in current year council tax payments. So despite all the challenges, we're still receiving a significant amount of council tax income. So moving on to, sorry, just bear with me. So what we're doing, so what we're going to be doing is first of all, we are promoting heavily our council tax support scheme. Now, council tax support is a means tested benefit, and each individual council now sets their own council tax support scheme, but we're promoting it heavily, so that, because I do have a concern that some people who are entitled to council tax support aren't actually claiming it. So we're raising the profile on the council's website. For those of you who've looked at it recently, you'll see we've now managed to get a slot on the homepage, which I'm very, very pleased about. We're issuing council tax flyers with reminders, and we seem to move that to bills as well. We've got lots of social media comes out. We're working with the CAB and we're working with the DWP to make sure that everybody's promoting the council tax support where they can. And also a question for members of the board. If I was to ask you about council tax support, and if you got a constituent that was asking you for help on how to claim, I don't know how widespread it is amongst our members that they would know how to do that. And one of the things that we are considering is whether or not some sort of member training might be useful, and I would be more than happy to have a further discussion or to take some feedback on that point. In due course, we will be awarding a further £150 for all working age households that are in receipt of council tax support. That's not only those that are currently in receipt, it's any new awards that we make in the 2021 year. And we also very much using our intelligence to try and highlight those people that can pay but choose not to pay with those that can't pay. I've just noticed that this is an old version of the presentation, and I've changed the language on the bottom line there, so apologies for that. But effectively, all I'm trying to say is that if people can't pay because of the coronavirus or whatever, we will give them whatever support we can to help them meet their needs, to maximise their income, to signpost help. But for those who do have the means to pay but choose not to, then we will do everything we can within our power to collect that debt. What we're also doing, we are promoting self-service, so we're asking our customers to try and help themselves. We have quite a good self-service offer now. People can claim some discounts and exemptions online, so we're trying to promote that heavily so that people who don't feel able to contact us or get into the council building can help themselves online. And we're also taking a long hard look at our recovery escalation process. There is an escalation process which starts with a bill. If people don't pay the bill, we'll send a reminder. If people don't pay on a reminder, then the next stage is a summons, and it goes through court, and then we can do all of the various course of action. We're taking a long hard look at that and seeing whether or not that is still fit for purpose. The issue that we've got, going back to one of the slides I mentioned earlier, is that council tax and business rates accounts for 61% of the council's income, and therefore we have to make sure that we collect as much of this as we possibly can. But we're reviewing it, and if it isn't appropriate on a certain case to go straight to a summons or to get a court order, then we won't do that. Okay, and on this next screen, this is just some of the wider support that we're looking to put in place. And this, by wider, this is not just the City Council. This is the City Council working in partnership with other organisations across the city. Currently, our understanding is around 28,000 people on furlough within the city, and with furlough due to end soon, there is an expectation that there may well be increased unemployment as a result. And as a result of that, there is going to be increased demand for support services. And I think what's very important right now is that we've potentially got a very new group of people who are going to need support. And it's important that we help those people access the support, because they're not going to be used to claiming certain benefits or know what support's available. And this is all going towards point 5 on this slide, that we've created a new money advice partnership across the city. There's 8 organisations involved in that, including the council, and it's chaired by Community Action Derby. And I think the important bit is what we want to make sure is that this isn't just a talking shop, and the council is effectively putting the money where their mouth is, because we agreed 360k's worth of funding over 3 years at a previous cabinet, and we're going to be focusing on what we can do now, whether or not we can put any partnership service models in place, and hoping that we can develop or further develop money management skills and confidence for people to help themselves and to have the skills to move forward. So moving on to business rates, if I can. So in 2021, we have reduced accounts, or the amount businesses have to pay by over £58 million. Now, very importantly, the majority of that reduction is fully funded by the government. So we've awarded nearly £42 million in what's called expanded retail discount, and this is full relief for those businesses that are within the retail, leisure and hospitality sectors. And where we've been able to give that relief, we're able to get full funding back for that. So that's around £42 million that the government will make good on in the fullness of time. It's important that I stress to the board that we've been, again, very proactive there. We've tried to make sure that no business out there that's entitled to this relief hasn't, we've tried to make sure they've all got it. But if you know of a business within those sectors, retail, leisure or hospitality, that hasn't got relief and you think it should, then contact us and we'll see what we can do. Similar to council tax, we suspended all recovery action up to the 30th of June 2020, both for current year and arrears. And again, similar to council tax, we allowed business rate payers to defer their first 2020 current year instalment from April to July, and around 505 businesses took us up on that offer. And finally, it's important, although I know the title was where businesses or residents can't get grants, it really is important to say that as a council we've paid now, as at today, £42.275 million in business support grants to 3,462 businesses, which is over 92% of the funding that we received. And just while we're on the business support grants, we heard today that the government are closing the business support grant and the discretionary grant scheme with effect from the 28th of August. So again, my plea to you is that if you know a business that you think should be entitled or may be entitled to either a business support grant or a grant through the discretionary scheme, please get them to contact us, because as I say, the government are closing the scheme down with effect from the 28th of August. Okay.
Right.
Okay, sorry, just one more slide. We're continuing to promote all the relief. So, for example, with every bill that we issue, we put in a claim form for small business rate relief, which is one of the most widely accessed reliefs that we pay. We work very closely with our colleagues, not only in D2N2 to maximise support available, but we've also worked very closely with our colleagues in economic regeneration. For example, on the business support grant scheme, we had colleagues from economic regeneration involved right from the beginning for the build and the design of the scheme, and they reciprocated that when they were putting together the discretionary scheme. As with council tax, we are continually reviewing our recovery escalation process to ensure it's fit for purpose, and we will listen to any reasonable arrangement. But I have to be clear, somebody offering £5 a month on a debt of 50,000 wouldn't be classed as reasonable and would be likely to be refused. But there's plenty that we're doing. So that's it. Thank you for listening. I'll take any questions.
Right, thank you, John. That was an excellent presentation. Anybody wish to ask John any questions on there? Please feel free.
I've got a question, Joe.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. So I think firstly, it's just to make the point that having spoken to both residents, but a lot of local businesses, they've been incredibly impressed with not just the level of support that they've received in terms of not just monetary terms to allow them to keep their businesses going and their heads above water during this crisis, but also the efficiency with which those schemes have been handled. And I think that's a real credit to the team of how they've managed to be able to do that during lockdown and everything else, and really just keep the city moving and keep a lot of those people who are really worried about their businesses sort of in a good position. So that's the good news, I guess. I guess that the next point will be that as we move past probably the peak of the health crisis and into the economic aftermath of that, is whether we've done any assessment or modelling as to how bad we think that could be. I know you alluded to the fact that we're seeing people now who potentially didn't previously seek to claim any kind of benefits. We know that there's still a great deal of people who are still on furlough whose jobs may well not rematerialise after that furlough scheme ends. And particularly here in Derby, we know that there is going to be an increase in people looking for work, as we've seen the confirmation of job losses at Rolls-Royce in the aerospace division. So I was just wondering whether what work has been put into maybe modelling some of that out and some anticipation of what we think the impact of that might be, particularly given the fact that when do we think the government sort of funded subsidies and support will ramp down, and where does that leave us in terms of that 61% of revenue we still hope to fund as council through council tax and business rates? Does that just a brief summary, where does that leave us in that position?
You're muted, John. You're muted. That's better. You're on.
Sorry. Thanks, Councillor. First of all, thank you for the comments and the feedback about the residents and businesses of the city feeling supported. That's really good to hear. I mean, business support grants has been my life at work for the last 3.5 months. So to know that the businesses out there have appreciated that, that's really good to hear. In terms of modelling, it's a very, very good question, and what my current predictions are is the in terms of council tax, current year council tax collection and current year business collection, business rates collection, I think will be anywhere between 1 and 5% down on what we would have collected in previous years within the year. So I think there's going to be an immediate bit of a sort of reduction in income. But what I would hope is that ultimately we'll be able to collect it. But I think in the short term there will be a reduction in council tax and business rates income received. We're looking at it very closely. We're looking at it every month. It'll be very interesting to know where we are at the end of July, because within the month of July we're in the process of sending out thousands and thousands of reminder notices to council tax to residents and businesses who haven't paid. So it'll be very interesting to see how our businesses and residents react to that, and whether or not they pay up and bring their accounts up to date or not. Much of the modelling work that we're doing is going to be done. Is being done by the partnership, which I alluded to earlier, in terms of looking at the impact, seeing exactly what's going to happen and what new processes and support we can put in place. One of the other pieces of modelling information that we've got is that we've received. It's what we've received from the Department of Work and Pensions. In terms of the numbers of people within the city that are claiming universal credit. At the end of May, there are now 23,000 people claiming universal credit across the city. These are figures from the DWP, they're not my figures, of which over 15,000 are claiming universal credit as being out of work. And further, what we have seen in April and May, in April we saw around 4,500 additional people go onto universal credit, and in May 5,500, around 5,500. So the amount of additional people claiming universal credit has really exploded, and that's why we are looking to promote council tax support as much as we possibly can, because one of the challenges that we have is that when people claim universal credit, that doesn't include council tax support. Back in the day, before universal credit, if somebody made a claim for housing benefit, they claimed council tax support or council tax benefit before that at the same time. That's no longer the case. So what we're trying to ensure is that for everybody that needs to claim universal credit, they at least know about council tax support and feel confident to be able to make that claim. And we're working with, I say, the CAB. I was on a call with them today, with the DWP and with the Money Advice Partnership, to make sure we get that message out to as many people as we possibly can.
Right, thank you very much for that. Councillor Pegg has indicated he wished to ask a question or questions.
Thank you. What proportion of the business support grant applications didn't actually qualify for a payment? And if possible, have any generalisation of the reasons why?
Okay, so if you can just bear with me 2 seconds, I can get this detail from my other screen, so I won't be showing it to people that shouldn't be seen. Just bear with me 2 seconds, please, and I can tell you the exact numbers from today. So, as at today, we had received in total 4,336 claims, and we had closed down 753 as ineligible. Okay, now there are a number of reasons why. One of the reasons is that the business was not the ratepayer as at the qualification date, which was the 11th of March. So they may well have been the business as at the 10th of March, but on the 11th of March, which is the qualification date, they weren't. So quite a few we turned down because of that. Quite a few we turned down because they simply weren't eligible in terms of the guidance that we've received. So they no longer, they neither qualified for small business rate relief, nor were they in the retail, hospitality or leisure sectors and qualified for the expanded retail discount, which are the prerequisites. And some people we have turned down because we received information. We needed to clarify that information, and we've written out to them on more than one occasion, and they've failed to respond. So we've closed that claim down. There are other reasons, but I would suggest that they are the three most principal reasons.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Begg. Councillor McChrystal.
Yeah, thanks, John, for the presentation. And I'd just like to say great work from yourself and from your team during this pandemic. Sounds as though you've absolutely been on it and all over it. And I do feel for the amount of hard work that you've invested and had to invest during this national crisis. And it sounds to me as though you've absolutely maximised this unprecedented government intervention, economic intervention that's taken place. I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Stanton about the modelling. I've just got a real fear that your job's not going to get any easier, John, in the coming months. In fact, may prove to actually get a lot harder. And I'm certainly very concerned about as we bounce out of this period of lockdown into a phase of recovery, just what that recovery is going to look like. So if there's any support, and hopefully I'll speak on behalf of all members, if there's any support any members can offer you and your team in terms of promoting benefits, particularly to benefits to folks that probably have never even dreamed or even considered that they've ever been in a position where they would need to acquire or ask for benefits or a hand up, then yeah, I mean, feel free to ask, and if you can put together some training, we're all ears, we'll be all welcome to that, and at the very least get some internal comms going with signposting us to where we need to go to be able to direct and support the folks that need it, John.
Okay, Councillor. Once again, thank you again for your kind words. Yeah, it has been tough, but you know, look, it's been tough for many people and many different departments and teams. So we're nothing special, but yeah, I'm very proud of the way that my team got stuck in. It has been difficult. But I think we've delivered a good result for the City Council and for the residents and businesses of the city. It's not going to get easier. It isn't going to get easier. Like I say, you know, we've done our modelling as to where we think we'll be in terms of collection, and we've got this really tricky balance over the forthcoming months of trying to have as much intelligence as possible so that we can split our customers into the can't pays and the won't pays and taking very different courses of action. But we're not going to do that alone, Councillor, and that's one of the important bits, is that we're very engaged with the CAB, we're very engaged with the DWP and other support networks to make sure that we can cast the net as far as we can with our limited resource. But you're absolutely right. There's going to be lots of difficult conversations. Very interestingly, a couple of weeks ago, I asked one of my colleagues in business rates whether or not we'd received any, whether there'd been a spike or an increase in businesses that we'd been notified by either the insolvency practitioner or somebody else, that businesses had gone either into administration or wound up. And at the time, this was say a few weeks ago now, maybe 4 weeks ago, we hadn't really seen that. But I think that's because it was the tip of the iceberg, and I think what we're going to see over the next 6 to 12 months is very sadly businesses, you know, that haven't made it through, and we need to be there to do what we can for the people that are losing their jobs as a result. And that's why we are majoring on people claiming council tax support and putting a support package in place for those, like you say, who just aren't used to this. But also that one of the problems will be that if businesses do go into administration or they're wound up, no longer a company, the business rates liability will go with it and we won't be able to collect it. So that's a real concern to us. And we're keeping a very, very close eye on it. I'll look to do something regarding some training or at least some signposting for council tax support. And the other discounts that are out there. Just while I've got you on, we're not going to stop there. We're looking at maybe putting some messages out on our bin lorries to get the message out about claiming, maybe on buses. We're looking at maybe doing a radio campaign, and so we really are looking at everything we can to maximise the promotion of council tax support, which is going to be one of the key support mechanisms for our residents across the city.
Thank you, Councillor McChrystal. Thank you, John. Councillor Nawaz, you want to add anything to any questions from you? Are you okay?
I've got no question, but I can just say that the business have praised quite well, the work the council tax team has been doing. The funding, forms have gone in and they've got the funding quite quickly. And they were praising, I was talking to a couple of businesses on Normanton Road today, and they were quite happy with the services John Massey and his team are giving. Thank you.
Again, That's really nice to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, John. There have been huge praises as well. I've helped several businesses out, fill the forms in, and people that I think what it was when you peaked, you had such a lot of workload that the delays were actually caused with the workload that came through. But when we've been in contact, you've sort of dealt with it, and people have had their payment within 4 days. So again, well done for that. Secondly, the offer of training, I think that's very good. It might be an idea for all councillors if we can get a package together to have a brief training package on that. For some of us, that have been around a while, we do know where to go and which officers to deal with, and I think that's really, really good. I'd just like to go back to council tax. Right. You said, all the provision that we've put into place, and I understand people that cannot pay or won't pay. But I was talking to a constituent. I've been. Can I say all the good work that you've done first for when we've had issues with that for the team and everybody else? You've done exceptionally well, so that goes with that. But this one particular person, I think he's just got himself in such a pickle, and COVID effects have not helped him as well, along with the loan structure. I've been speaking to departments, but I think when you talked about changing how we're collecting it, I spoke to him this morning. He's had a letter that he's got to pay within 4 days. I've never heard about the 4 days before. Maybe that's right, maybe it's not. But what can we do when people are faced with that kind of level of problem? His problem's been sort of ongoing for a couple of years now. Having double properties and renovating a property and various other complex matters. And I think COVID-19 has just it's tipped him over.
Oh, okay, thank you for that. I've also never heard of 4 days. So I'd be very interested to know what document he has received that says that. Yeah. But the situation is this: the double-edged sword of all this is that one, whenever we're talking to a customer, we will try and get them wherever possible to clear their current year debt within the year, because if we don't, then all that happens is they get another bill at the end of March for next year, and their debt just now. We accept that for some people they just don't have the sufficient income compared with their compared with their outgoings to be able to pay a significant amount of council tax. What we will try and do, and we work closely with Bernard Fenton's team in the welfare reform team here, and what we will try and do, it's very important that people that have got debts understand that council tax alongside their mortgage and their rent is a priority debt, and therefore it's if we're talking to them, we will try and get them to restructure their repayment so that, I don't know, if somebody's got £100 of spare income a month, to which they can pay to their debts, clearly we'll always try to get a good chunk of that for council tax. But we acknowledge that if there's mortgage and rent, they're also priority debts. But what we won't want to happen is somebody's only paying a small amount of council tax and are paying 4 or 5 times the amount of that weekly to clear a catalogue debt. So we will try to use our skill to make sure that they can, if you like, reorder their debts and their priorities so that the council tax gets a bigger slice. We'll also try and use our expertise to signpost them so they can maximise their income. There might be, for example, a benefit that they're entitled to that they're not claiming. So we'll also do that. Now, sadly, we don't have the resources to have really in-depth conversations with every single customer that's got a multiple debt problem, and that's why we are looking to build on our existing relationships with the CAB, and we were talking about it today, so that we can enhance our referral system so that these customers that have got multiple debts, and that we can get them talking to CAB who do have the debt management experts, and they can have their in-depth conversation, and they can then set a repayment program that enables them to pay as much as they can so they clear the debt as quickly as they can, but also they live within their means. Because what we know from bitter experience, if somebody owes, if we say to somebody we'll only accept £50 a week and they can't afford £50 a week, we get nothing. We know that from experience. So if they can't afford £50 a week, we shouldn't be setting an arrangement at £50 a week. We should be setting an arrangement which is based on their available income after we've done a full income and expenditure account. So on the person in question, if you want to email me after the board meeting, we can have a look at this particular case. But generally, we are always there to try and help people. But by the same token, to go back to one of the original slides, council tax is such a huge deal to the council now that we do have to collect the income as quickly as we possibly can. But we'll never do that by making an unreasonable or unrealistic arrangement, because it just won't get kept to.
No, I totally agree with you, John. I mean, this is one of its type of cases I've come across. Like I said, full credit to the team and Bernard's team. We've solved a lot of issues where people have been satisfied and been able to collect council and business tax. So that's really appreciated. I'll drop you a line after the meeting.
No problem.
Okay, thank you very. Any more questions for John? If not, thank you very much, John. That was a very good presentation.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Right. Item 8, strategic lead on council services, and I think that's Heather Greenan.
Hi, good evening. I'm just going to share my presentation.
Okay.
Can everybody see that?
Yes. It could do with being larger.
Larger. Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
You've got it in notes view, Heather. You might want
Have I? Oh, okay, I'll put it into slideshow. Ooh. Is that? Can people see that?
Now you want to, on the top left, you want to press duplicate slideshow. You see what it says that? Yeah. Oh. Now it's back to notes view. Whatever works for you.
Oh dear. Sorry about this. There we go.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. In which case, I'll make a start. Now, I think I was asked to present on quite a broad topic. I think overall it was how is the council managing or how will it manage its strategic needs once the public health situation is over. It also asked to pick up how we are working with our colleagues and supporting them in terms of how they work from home, and the situation around returning to work, and also finally how we're looking after colleagues from a wellbeing perspective. So what I thought it was best to do is kind of just set it in the context of overall our response to COVID-19 and also our plans for recovery, which will pick up all of those different aspects. I know following this item there's also a presentation or report by our Director of Finance in terms of the financial impact of COVID-19, so I think this sets the scene quite nicely for that item.
Thank you.
So, oops, daisy. So, first of all, I just wanted to start off by saying that, as I think everyone is aware, the public health situation certainly isn't over. Over the last 4 months, we've worked really closely with our colleagues in Derby and Derbyshire. So our partnership approach through the Local Resilience Forum, we work at both a strategic and a tactical level. Just trying to anticipate issues, mitigate risks, and really kind of address need as we go forward. At the end of June, we did publish an outbreak management plan that I'm sure you've seen. As we've seen in other parts of the country, spikes can easily occur, and we need to be prepared for that eventuality. So we are still very much in response mode, and we've had to do that whilst working virtually. So using Skype, as we see, we now have council meetings online. Many of our colleagues are still working from home, and we have managed this situation, via the online working, but also still managing to do things at pace. So that was the first thing I guess I just wanted to emphasise before we go forward. The response itself that we've seen over the last 4 months, I think as Simon's report on the financial impact sets out really well, there were overall around 5 different areas in a way that we responded to, whether that be ensuring vulnerable people get the health and care that they need, supporting our communities, working very closely, as I think we've just heard from John Massey, in terms of helping our businesses and our workforces to stay resilient, maintaining our frontline essential services, and I think more than ever, local authorities, were identified as key workers, and we saw, a lot of appreciation from citizens about that. And then finally, one close to my heart, it was keeping people informed. And if I can just put a shout out to my fantastic communications team, who I think have done a great job over the last 4 months in terms of, I think getting the key messages out there, of which there have been many to communicate. We have seen some absolutely fantastic achievements. COVID has really brought people together. Whether it be from a council colleague perspective, whether it be from a councillor perspective, our partners and communities, everybody has contributed to the fantastic efforts that we have seen over the last 4 months. So whether it be, our fantastic hospital to home discharge team, the work that we've done in terms of looking after our homeless over the last 4 months, whether it be continuing to work with families through supporting the hubs that we saw testing cases for COVID, and of course I think through our community hub, maintaining vital supplies to people who were shielding. And as I think we've also seen through the work of John's team, we've given out a huge amount of support to financially in terms of businesses, and also in more recent weeks we have safely reopened the city centre. So a huge effort, lots and lots of I think opportunities for us to take forward and build upon. As we look more towards recovery, what I wanted to try and do next is just give you a flavour of some of the strategic needs that we are starting to see. The full impact of COVID, I don't think we'll know for for a number of months. You know, I mean, whether we're into, you know, we're looking at intelligence from different sources, from national, local sources, to try and give us that kind of, you know, rich view of actually where we need to focus our efforts in terms of addressing that need. But first of all, from a community perspective, I mean, obviously we've seen in Derby a number of, you know, we've seen over 1,300 confirmed cases of COVID, with around 1,300 lives lost. As part of that, you know, in terms of managing our efforts to shield people, to protect them from COVID, our community hub saw over 2,500 calls. Now, obviously, the shielding arrangements are, you know, coming down as coming to an end as the lockdown eases. However, I think we recognise that community response is going to be really critical as we go forward in terms of managing the pandemic. And certainly what we've seen through COVID is this strengthening relationship with the voluntary community sector. There are some fantastic groups out there, some fantastic networks that really have, you know, enabled that community hub response. We are, I guess, we're starting to see increased concerns about mental and physical health conditions that emerged, you know, I think as we went through the lockdown period, and we're working closely with the clinical commissioning group around, you know, I think trying to address those, and they are bringing forward their recovery pathways to support that. There are other aspects that we're seeing in terms of housing, in terms of vulnerable children, obviously not in school, and we're starting to see a rise in contacts for things like domestic violence and also children's safeguarding. So, I mean, I think that you know, there are some real emerging needs that certainly from our community recovery response, that is where we are wanting to focus. In terms of our economy, I mean, here, interestingly, there was a Centre for City, which is a national think tank. They published a report on the impact of COVID that we were likely to see on towns and cities across the UK, and they did identify that Derby was likely to be hit quite hard, partly because of its reliance on the aerospace and manufacturing sectors, and also partly because of our focus in the city centre on retail and hospitality, obviously, which has taken a big hit during the lockdown period, and we are doing our best to reopen safely. I think here again, I mean, we've you know, recognised the economic needs quite quickly in terms of understanding, you know, around a third of our workforce is furloughed, and gradually we, you know, as the furlough arrangements end, we may see, you know, the start of, I guess, more unemployment. We've already seen quite a large increase in universal credit claims, and that's even before the furlough period ends. The culture and the leisure sector is struggling in particular. But I think the real positive here is that there has been a very, very strong response from partners and businesses, and the economic task force was set up very early on, actually during the pandemic, and I think that's going to stand us in good stead as we go forward in terms of supporting people who are made, you know, who are made redundant and who need support around skills development, and you know, I think other ways in terms of regenerating our city centre. So there are plans already in place around that. From a council point of view, again, here we've, you know, I think we're starting to see some really interesting impacts. There were a lot of positives emerged during COVID, whether it be greater collaboration across the council, the opportunity to work virtually, which I know we're all taken to now. But there are some, you know, we've seen there has been a big financial impact, increased demand for services in a number of areas, and also due to, you know, where services have closed, we are, you know, that we acknowledge that there are backlogs just due to the unique situation. One of those is registration services, where, you know, at the moment we do have a backlog around birth registration because we did close that aspect down in relation, you know, in line with our national guidance to focus on the registration of deaths. But it's about taking forward the positives that we have here into our recovery plan so that we can build on new ways of working, and even the improved public perception that I think we've had from key workers. I don't know whether any of you have seen our Here for Derby campaign, where we have really celebrated in particular staff who were redeployed from their normal jobs into frontline areas, and we've seen a terrific response, both from I think within the council and outside, in terms of appreciation for those people. So as we look ahead to recovery, and last month in June we brought to Cabinet a commitment to develop a recovery framework, and we are working in earnest to develop the recovery plan in line with the 3 strands, which I'll go through in a moment. But I just want to emphasise the principles that underpin that kind of planning. So it's collaboration, and that's both internally and externally with our partners. COVID has proved, the resilience of communities. It's also proved how fantastic, Derby is when it works in partnership, and we need to continue that. We need to continue to work with pace. Some of the issues that we're seeing already, we need to work quickly if we're going to mitigate the impact on our citizens. We need to be creative. We need to focus directly on our communities, as I think we have proven that we can do. We also need to be more outcome focused, and again, that's close to my heart from a performance management point of view. We can, by shifting our focus towards those outcomes and really clearly measuring those, we can really, I think, enable us to pull out the right actions that we need to take that are going to make a difference. And then finally, it is working very closely with the city. So in terms of what that recovery planning looks like, there are 3 strands to it. So there's an organisational strand. So actually within the council, what are we going to do differently as a result? How are we going to respond? Can we build on, for example, the digital work, the intelligence-led kind of insight needs that we should develop to inform our kind of planning going forward? And from a community point of view, we saw the fantastic work of the community hub. It is very much building on that. And using those networks to help us as we go forward. And then from an economic point of view, I've also picked up the work of the Economic Recovery Task Force. What we are doing is working in line with our principles. We are engaging with partners, and the City Partnership Board has been re-established over the last couple of months. It met for the first time in June, and then again last month, just a few weeks ago. And we are engaging with our partners through that partnership board, linking in with our outcome boards that we see across the city to agree the priorities that will feature as part of the recovery plan. I mentioned outcomes. These are the emerging outcomes that we're seeing across the strands. So from an economic point of view, it is about boosting business confidence. It's about diversifying our economy with, I think, and refocusing our city centre. And it's also about decarbonisation. So, taking forward the climate change agenda. From a community point of view, it's about building on resilience. It's about equality of opportunity. Now, interestingly, I think, we have seen a lot of the inequalities have been accentuated as part of, I think the outcomes that we've seen so far for COVID. Now, there's been a lot of work done on this already, but it is about taking that forward. And also from a health perspective, we need to ensure that our health of our communities is protected. And then from an organisational point of view, it's focusing on the citizen and the customer. It's being intelligence-led, and it's building on the culture change that we've seen. The board did ask for further information around how we are working safely. So for our workforce across the board, many people are continuing to work from home. Not everybody can work from home due to the nature of their role. So particularly if they're in a frontline role, they've been working throughout. There hasn't been the possibility of working from home. And where that is the case, we are obviously undertaking risk assessments and using PPE where required, particularly where personal care is being delivered. the majority of our staff are continuing to work from home, and we are giving them the message that, if you can work from home, please do so. We are seeing roughly about 70 to 90 individuals in the council house on an average day. Now that is out of a capacity of about 2,000. So you can see at the moment we still have most individuals working quite effectively at home. Where people are coming into the workspace, that could be in the council house or it could be in another setting, we are obviously making sure that there are appropriate social distancing measures in place, and particularly if you've been into the council house recently, you will see that we have signage, we have hand washing, we have sanitizer. There is a whole range of measures that have been taken to ensure that social distancing is maintained in the workplace. And perhaps most importantly, what we are doing is focusing on well-being. So whether for people working from home or in the office. And there are a number of ways in which colleagues can access wellbeing support, whether it be through our 24-hour employee assistance programme, which does, I was going to say that can then reference in counselling support where needed. There's a range of tips on remote working and wellbeing, and that's for all employees. And again, we are regularly promoting this through our internal communication that we've done. We've recently done an employee conference as well, where again we did emphasise the access to these guidance notes. Particularly for managers, there is e-learning around available to support where we, I was going to say, working in a remote working environment, and lots of other guidance, just generally around in terms of staying connected with your team, and tips in terms of how we can do that, via Skype, whether it be having a tea break or a quiz or something like that, just to try and keep the relationships going, and trying to bring a bit of humour into what has been quite a tough situation. And then finally, we do have close to 200 mental health first aiders. So in more serious situations, there are people available who can, if people want to talk and seek help from a mental health perspective. Because wellbeing is such a priority, we did undertake a survey. I think it was at the end of May, start of June, where we had over 900 responses, and what that did do was give us quite a bit of reassurance that actually staff were feeling 88% said they felt valued and supported by their manager. 91% said they know how to access wellbeing support, which is really positive. 80% feel connected, and 83% feel well informed. So obviously, we are not resting on our laurels. We are continuing to, promote wellbeing options for staff. But I think that survey did give us some reassurance that the staff are connected despite the difficult situation that we're working in. I think that's it from me. I'm happy to take any questions at all.
Heather, thank you very much. It was a very good presentation, very informative. Councillors, any questions for Heather, or shall I kick off?
I've got a couple of questions, if I can, Chair.
Yes, please feel free.
Heather, that was a fairly extensive presentation, and once again, I guess just to echo more broadly the entire council, and I think you spoke to it, I think it really has challenged a lot of people and changed a lot of people's perception of a lot of the council more broadly, and the services they provide and how vital they are for this city. So hopefully we can, capitalise on that and really sort of move forward in a really positive way in the eyes of the residents of Derby, and I think we will. I think so. I'll just fire these off. So I was wondering whether we retrospectively managed to have a look at and do any assessment of how our preparedness for the pandemic, and I know we've reacted really well to it, but retrospectively how our preparedness looks, and I guess to that is, are there any lessons learned? So I know we did an awful lot of initiatives and different things happened, but given the fact that this might not be the last pandemic, and we may face future crises of a similar nature, what's that process of looking at lessons learned? Are there any early ones that we want to pull out, or is there a process at least in place about us actually doing a almost like an inquiry into how well we did, in the cold light of day after this is all done. And I think probably tied to that is, in terms of performance management, what would be sort of reprofiling some of those performance indicators for COVID, just to ensure that it doesn't become a bit of a catch-all excuse in 6, 12, 18 months' time as to why things are still below target. Are we just going to reprofile those as soon as possible so we can sort of have a new baseline to work from? And finally, the homelessness, the initiative that we used to get the homelessness people on the streets, is that ended now? I don't know whether you know that, but I'm just asking. That's all my questions. Thanks, Jay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stanton. So the first one around lessons learned, we are undertaking that actually through our local resilience forum currently. So all partners have been asked to do a kind of a debrief in terms of what went well, what they feel could have been improved. So we're currently doing that actually. So at this point, I haven't got any lessons learned that we can bring, but I mean, I think that is being undertaken both at a national level and a local level, because inevitably there will be some lessons to learn. I think, whilst reflecting on, I think there's an awful lot of positives and a lot to be proud of, but certainly we will in due course, I think undertake that exercise more fully. But at the moment we're doing it through the local resilience forum, which is the right place to do it. Secondly, I think you asked about performance management, didn't you? In terms of reprofiling targets and things like that. If I'm being honest, we are actually having quite a fundamental look at performance management. I mentioned that we are shifting our focus more to outcomes. And as part of that, we are, trying to make sure that a lot of our performance, that I guess, we're reviewing our priorities in relation to our recovery plan, and then also assessing how we measure performance as a result. So, because at the moment we do measure a huge number of things, some of which actually I think have been proven to not be as important as others. So I would just say that I think we're having a fresh look at this. And this might be something that perhaps we bring back to a future. I think all of the scrutiny boards really have an interest in performance, but I do think we need to reprofile our targets in some instances. But I think more importantly, we need to reprofile what we're measuring. So that was my response on that one. And sorry, I can't remember what your third question was.
I don't know now. I've written it down and got pieces of paper in front of me. So the only last one, and you may just want to redirect this one, was around the
it was housing. Yeah, because it was homelessness. So the hotel provision has now ended, and we have put in place appropriate exit arrangements for those individuals within the hotel. To kind of move into other temporary accommodation and other options. There's been an awful lot of good work there. I was going to say I don't know the detail fully, but I can give you that separately if you need.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Stanton and Heather. Councillor Pegg. Councillor Pegg, are you there? You want to ask questions, or shall I ask my?
No questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pegg. Right, Heather, I'm not sure whether you'll be aware of this or not. I mean, these are often questions that we get asked as members that are on the front line. So I'll go one by one with them. So where does Derby actually stand within terms of this second peak that we're supposed to be getting in the ranking? Because I've seen a ranking of cities that are there, and there was some talk about Derby being 13th or something. How correct is that? We get asked that quite often.
I don't know specifically where we are, because I know the problem is that each day it seems that there's different data being reported. Obviously, earlier on in the pandemic, the number of cases in Derby was quite high. So obviously we had quite an early peak, which actually we have then seen a sort of a more gradual reduction and then a steadying in cases. Certainly, my understanding is at the moment is that we are not, we are not showing any signs of a kind of another spike. So at the moment, the cases are remaining extremely steady, and they're, in comparison to other cities, remain pretty low. Now, obviously, we're keeping a really close eye on that. The outbreak management group is looking at data regularly. We are publishing the latest data on a weekly basis in terms of cases, and actually you can kind of you see that via areas. I'm really happy to share that with councillors if that would be useful.
Yes, I think it would be. So just that we can sort of address concerns from the public, really. Okay, the second one really was how's Derby cope with the problems and the sort of testing in care homes in the city? Are we on top of this now? This is one of the things I raised originally, and I think it got overlooked even by the government. But how's Derby coping with that?
If I'm being honest, I probably can't give a categorical answer on that. I mean, my understanding is that we our overall approach is obviously in line with government guidance, and care homes are seeing regular testing, both of staff and of residents. However, I don't know the detail. That would be a question for the adult services teams. Yeah. Right.
Okay. And again, the COVID-related statistics that we're getting, you said that we've had some 300 deaths in the city. And one of the questions we get asked again, I think the statistics that have been sort of measured here, are they all been put in the same pocket? Because if you have a look at 2019, I think there was some 19,500 deaths recorded nationally of say flu, pneumonia. How are we recording these statistics? I know that's what the hospitals are saying, but are we segregating those? I know it's a difficult one. You may know, you may not, but because you mentioned the 300 figure,
we can certainly break that down between I think those recorded in hospitals and those recorded in care homes and community settings. So again, there is data that's published by the ONS that does break it down to that level. And again, I mean, I'm happy to share sources there because I appreciate that residents are obviously interested in those.
Yeah. I mean, this is where a lot of these are coming from. And sometimes, we need to be sort of armed and equipped to respond to them. And like you say, we get conflicting sort of advice, so that would be really good to know. Right, so again on the community hubs, I think a lot of councillors have been involved in their local areas with the community hubs, and it was good to see different officers from different departments quite randomly stepping in to sort of support the volunteer hub as well. I just wanted to say what an excellent job that they've done as well on that. And finally, the mental health first aiders, how can they be accessed? I mean, I'm assuming that I don't know, is there a list? There is. Point people to their direction?
Yeah, so there's a list that's available on iDerby. So that contains people's basically how to access people. So with email addresses, phone numbers, and I know many of the mental health first aiders are happy to meet people in socially distanced situations if need be. So no, I think that the mental health first aiders are quite staff know how to access them, if you see what I mean. So.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was really, like Councillor Sutton said, very comprehensive presentation and very informative again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So, I think we're on item 9 now, COVID-19 and the financial impact. Simon Riley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And obviously what I'll say in this part of the report builds on the real success of the interventions we've made across the city, supporting communities and businesses. So there's not a presentation for this, but instead there's the report that members and indeed anyone watching on YouTube can see on our CMIS system. And it's this is really to allow the board an opportunity to seek further information and assurances on the council's response to COVID and the financial impact, and to update the board on the financial impact of the COVID pandemic. I think members will recall that I took a report to Cabinet in June and Executive Scrutiny, which highlighted a lot of the initiatives that have been mentioned so far, such as the success of bringing rough sleepers off the streets and providing wraparound care that hopefully improves their life outcomes, not just in the time that they were with us in the Holiday Inn, but after that time. The work that we've done on social care and with the care homes and infection control, to the great work of Street Pride in managing to keep many of our operational services going through that time. So that is attached to this report, and again, I'd just ask members to, in a sense, reflect on probably the magnitude of the challenges that we did face, and I think we faced head on, but very successfully. But I think probably my reflection as your Director of Finance is that we had to respond very quickly to a huge range of community, business and individual needs very quickly, and often, if I've got to be honest, in advance of government guidance, which throughout this whole pandemic has been coming out often after government announcements, having many different versions. And in many ways, we've had to step out with confidence and be agile and cost effective. I do think we've done that, as I'll sort of mention later. But the quantum of need means that every council in the country had to spend in faith to do the right things for their community. And based on the sort of initial announcements by the Secretary of State that he would stand by councils in responding to the pandemic. That led to a couple of grant announcements, unring-fenced grant announcements of approximately 7 million each. So two announcements to meet the costs of COVID, and then a couple of ring-fenced announcements, which was infection control and outbreak management that we've got, which have to be used for specific purposes. In addition to that, we've had things like successful high streets and reopening the city centre and other dedicated funds. So we have, as a council, had to create controls and spending plans around that. And maybe just to give some comfort to members, I represent the council on quite a few national bodies and regional bodies and professional bodies, and we look at the impact of the COVID pandemic on our spend, and the impact on Derby is probably about 10% of the council's net revenue budget, so in the low 20 millions compared to our budget of 225 million. Some councils are experiencing an impact of up to 35% of their net revenue expenditure, and that is creating a major challenge for them in terms of what is the plan that they can do to both meet their legal obligation to balance the budget, but also respond to their community needs. I think what we have done in Derby is make sure that the money is spent wisely in the right place, and actually, as Heather said previously, trying to make sure it addresses the outcomes that she highlighted in her presentation. In the report, I talk about further announcements that were awaited from the government in terms of an additional set of government funding, and they have announced 500 million of additional funding to local authorities towards the costs of COVID, and that's for Derby, our share is about 2.5 million. And they've also said that they will provide an income guarantee on fees, sales fees and charges of 75% of the impact on councils after the first 5% has been discounted. We don't know the exact methodology of that because the government, even though they announced it 3 weeks ago, have not announced the key methodology, but that could be anywhere between sort of £2 and £5 million. So the government is still responding, but they talk about it as being a comprehensive package, and at the moment I think it's still nationally and locally not enough to cover the impact of COVID. So the report also details a bit about the expenditure pressures, reduced income, and the council tax and business rate impact. John Massey talked earlier about the impact of maybe not being able to collect between 1% and 5% of the council tax and business rates in year, and that could be a hit of about £11 million. Normally that would have to be recouped the following year. The government have announced that we can spread that over 3 years, and we still hope for some additional funding there. Currently, with our services in lockdown, we were experiencing income losses of about £1.5 million a month, including, for example, leisure income of £500,000, car parking income of nearly £500,000, and other income losses. But that will obviously, as these facilities reopen, as car parks are starting to charge and getting people back into the city centre, and leisure centres reopening hopefully at the end of this month, then some of that income will come back, which is why our forecast is, that I've detailed in the report, is something in the region of just over £7 million of income pressures in this financial year, and 17 million of expenditure pressures. And the expenditure has been on, as I said, the street pride services, social care, homelessness, housing, and other issues as detailed in the attached appendices. It is difficult to forecast exactly because we don't know the phasing of the exit from lockdown. As you're aware, we get announcements and we only get to know those at the time that often that appears on the television, and that there is the risk of a second wave of the pandemic and potential future lockdowns that could have an impact on our financial position. So when we have a look at it, this report details that I think the direct impact of COVID is in the region of about £24–25 million, of which we will probably get, or we've probably had about £18–20 million so far, and that the council tax could be an impact of £11 million, but that can be spread over 3 years. So what is the impact going forward? Well, I think the impact going forward is uncertainty, because we will have some scarring of the council's normal budgets, such as I don't think, for example, car parking income will go back to its pre-COVID levels. We will have to maybe work with our care homes and other providers to meet increasing social care costs, work with other people around social distancing measures, and then there will be a huge variety of other things that we'll have to model and consider. So a simple thing is, for example, an increase in people in receipt of council tax support, which is right and proper, will impact on the council's collection fund and council tax levels that we can levy. So it is an uncertain world. I have a duty as your treasurer to deliver a balanced budget. We're hoping the government provide some flexibility about that, because at the moment we still have a gap in 2020-21, and we will have a gap in the next 3 years. But I want to just re-emphasise that when I look at the national comparisons, I think the way that we have managed this financially and the costs that we've incurred are towards the more cost-effective end of the comparisons I've seen, and I'm hoping that with some further government help, which we are lobbying for, plus, if you want to call it, good, sound decisions about what our community needs and our financial sustainability, we can look at the next 3 to 5 years to try and, in a sense, allow the city to recover from what is, I have to say, the most unprecedented event. Sorry, I've used that word, in respect of the impact on the council's finances in my 35 years of being a local government finance officer. So I'm quite happy to take questions on either the main report or the appendices, but just to give you assurance, I do think that with responded to this pandemic well, both operationally and financially.
Right, thank you very much for that, Simon. Tough times ahead. Councillor Stanton?
I think mostly it's covered in the report. It's quite expansive in the appendices too. Just one question. It may be a wider one. You might not be able to answer it. It was reported last week that councils will be empowered to introduce local lockdowns, and I think there are some concerns around that in terms of what the triggers for those might be, and actually the willingness locally to basically cease economic activity in a given area. And I think that it's a bit of a problem. But I guess financially, I didn't read anything about what the provision is being made for additional funds should, for instance, Derby have to impose a local lockdown. Is there provision in place, or is that something we'd have to tackle as and when?
At the moment, Councillor Stanton, there is no national provision for the consequential impacts of a local lockdown. And I live near Leicester, and they have the mayor saying that the government should be stepping up to provide support to businesses who maybe would have been able to come out of lockdown, additional costs of enforcing that lockdown, and if you want to call it, maybe the unknown but impact that for some companies who were hoping to get back to more normal activity levels and coming out of furlough and all the other actions they had, some of those knock-on effects on their business plans and whether that leads to companies going out of business. So I think the Leicester situation will be a good proxy of whether the government will support those lockdown consequences. Personally, I think as we've moved to now local authorities having the local powers to enforce, if you want to call it, more specific lockdowns and everything else, is how would you police it and how would you fund it? So I'm not optimistic that we will get a package, a national package that we can apply. Whether, if that was to happen in Derby, and let's hope it doesn't, we could go and lobby on a specific case basis, as I know some councils have done, but I don't think any have had success thus far, unfortunately.
Thanks. Worrying.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Pegg.
Thank you. No questions. Very comprehensive report. Thank you very much.
Yes, Simon, for the first time I'm stumped as well. I've read all the reports and it is very complex, and there is a lot of tough times ahead. But again, I think all departments have sort of stepped up and done the best they can under the circumstances, and the staff have certainly gone beyond the call of duty. So there's no questions from me either, unless Councillor Stanton's got any more. I'd just like to thank you very much for a thorough presentation and the appendices. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, Dominic, you can all leave now as well if you're done. Heather and Simon, we're just going on to the final bit of the agenda.
Hello. So this is the work programme for this year. As you can see, we've got 4 items or 5 items listed for the October meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you want to expand on any of those. We've got emergency planning, business continuity, legal and democratic services, finance and risk management. Do any of the councillors have any specific areas you'd like to look into for those?
Councillors, I did put in this work programme from a previous year, so we, went ahead with it. I did say at the last meeting, if you've got any other bits you want to add to it, it would be good. I find it sometimes difficult working off a screen. I do prefer papers, and again, I think you might have sent it, or I might got it wrong. If you can send the plan with the dates on to us via email, i.e. this document, and again, the portfolio that goes with it. I think you sent it. I'm not sure if you can send them as one.
Yeah, I can send those again.
Yeah, I can print them off straight away, and if councillors see anything else that's there, if you can send them. I did think you did send them previous minutes as well, previous topics that we've covered, so they're aware of not to duplicate anything. You know, we did have a quite an intense year last year as well. Any comments on that, councillors?
Just one thing, Chair. I mean, I guess, and I think we talked about this in our pre-meeting, it's not just about sort of new topics, but if we can sort of drill down to quite, you know, where we have an interest, if there's a level of specificity we can go to, then we can ensure that the officers who are attending bring a report that isn't generic, but rather really gets to the nub of what we want to sort of drill down into. And I guess, given the fact that we're going to, Dominic's going to send out some details to us, then is there a date by which that if we want to turn that around and get ideas or our input to you by, you know, I don't know whether the end of, you know, midway through August to give, or end of August to give officers sufficient time to prepare those reports?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's what we try to do, give them sufficient time. Me and Dominic have seen this with officers sometimes, especially under the current climate as well. We'll have to give them plenty of time. So end of August would be fine. And by all means, yes, let's have a look at the depth of things, because we, you know, some of the questions that I asked earlier were searching questions, and I wasn't sure that they was going to have that kind of detail available, and they didn't. And I think, you know, from our point of view, when we're sort of asked by the public or bodies, authorities, you know, I think we need to, you're right, quite right, we need to have that kind of detail in. So if we send out all the package, and then if there's any on these that you want to have a look at in greater detail, just let us know, and we can get that level of detail that we need.
Perfect.
Yeah. Councillor Pegg, are you happy with that?
Yes, that's fine by me.
Right. Okay, excellent. If you can do that for us, Dominic, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Yep, I'll send those out after this meeting, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add, Dominic?
I'd just say, with the risk management and finance items in October, as they were both covered at this meeting, it might be worth exploring them again perhaps in January or March, and perhaps focusing on some of the other items for the October meeting, but we'll discuss through email, and you'll be able to decide on what you want there.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you very much for that, everybody. Good night. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.